very liberal with the conversation today. Members of the public have spoken beyond at nauseum, and we're about to come to a close. Mr. Willis has been acknowledged, and then we will vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your words. I frequently said over my 11 years, reasonable minds can disagree. And I'm okay with respectfully disagreeing, but when you call me a racist, that is outright offensive. When you call me a racist, it's outright offensive. I don't challenge you when you split verbs. I don't challenge you when you make up words. I don't challenge you when you say things that are absolutely inappropriate, flat out wrong, and erroneous. I let you do it. How dare you call me a racist? You don't know me. You've never spent more than the time in a committee room with me. And so when you call me a racist, you cross the line. So now, once you figure out what you need to do with the rest of your life besides sit in a committee meeting, then we can have another conversation. But if you want to have a conversation with me that's less than appropriate, do it off camera in a space where we can have a real conversation, man to man.
When that'd be a good time?
You tell me when.
When you get off this committee.
You're absolutely right. And I'll make sure that the police follow us so they can lock you up for the criminal acts that you continue to perpetrate when you make threats. Because I tell you, I keep promises. So here's the deal. You talk about free enterprise. First of all, you should understand your history. Free enterprise doesn't mean that it's free. That's called understanding your history. It's never been free. So the idea that you just get to simply create third world shanties in a community because you believe you can does not mean that you can. You talk about restrooms. I've never seen a public vending space with a restroom. Never. You all talked about measuring spaces. I've never seen anybody deliver building plans or a tent plan to the Department of Zoning or Department of Planning in the city of Atlanta in the history of public vending. I don't know how many people you expect to have. We don't know anything about what you're doing and how you're operating. But you want to sit back and defend it and then call me racist because I disagree? I have a right to disagree, just like you have a right to disagree. But when you attack me personally, believe me, I understand how to do the same. So this idea that there were 3 vendors on Campbellton Road means you've never really spent much time on Campbellton Road. Because I've been on Campbellton Road. And there have been 3 vendors at a time on certain locations.
Which one?
There have been 3 vendors at a time on certain locations.
That's not true.
You know, part of the deal is that you don't like to operate by the rules. Because the rules say that when you speak, I don't speak. And so I sit here and listen to you espouse the craziness that you espouse every day and every week that you come up here. So if you believe that that is a right that you're afforded, and inappropriately so, then that's the choice for the chairman to make. So we're not going to go back and forth. So you can come back up here all you want and do whatever you think you want. You talked about the mayor doing his sales. There are people who do door-to-door sales every day that don't pay $250 every 90 days. Why? Because it's door-to-door sales. It's called Mary Kay. It's called Amway. It's called a whole lot of things, but it's not called private property vending. So if that's what the mayor was doing, then that's what he did. I have no affinity for or against anybody with or without a degree.
I think so.
Doesn't matter what you think. At this point, I'm letting you know I don't respect what you think. Because at this point, after you've disrespected me, what you think doesn't matter. I have no problem with anyone who doesn't have a degree. In fact, my father didn't have a degree. So the reality is that I don't have a problem with that. But when you decide that you want to disrespect me in a very public, personal way, I take issue with it. It's not the first time you've done it. You sat here and called Ms. Winslow a gentrification queen. Who Who died and made you judge and jury of what is right and wrong in the black community, the white community, or any community for that matter? I mean, what you do is so much holier than thou that you can simply talk to people any way you want to and think you can call us whatever you want to out of our names, out of who we are. You don't even know us. Don't say another word to me. Don't say a word directly to me. Don't do it. Because I will be removed from office. You will not disrespect me in a public space. So you need to figure out who you are, because I know whose I am, and I know how to deal with people who disrespect who I am.
Yes, sir, but Mr. Chair, he directed me personally. He directed me
Mr.
personally.
Shakir, you've had your time at the microphone, and I stated publicly that
Barrier to that. In fact, there are private lawyers who come through the municipal court now that have clients that they refer to our community court.
Right, okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Willis.
Thank you. We have been taking, I mean, in all due respect, some grave liberties here in how we've described what the system is. What we did as a council when we decided to get rid of jury trials, or we allowed the state to help us get rid of jury trials, is that we essentially dealt with a situation. We essentially created, or went back to being a special, went from being a special court to being like every other municipal court in the state of Georgia, which is we stopped having jury trials. So if you were going to have a jury trial, you always went over to the state court in just about every jurisdiction in the state of Georgia, with the exception of Atlanta. Atlanta was a special court. That's why we had to do it by legislation at the state capitol. This idea that somehow we're violating Miranda rights, and I mean, this went way, I mean, this got kind of crazy. I mean, and I thought you would at least help Mr. Young out, but instead you kind of helped him keep going. The reality is, Mr. Young, every time our police department goes into work and they solve a crime that is considered a felony, they send it over to Superior Court. We never see a dime of that money. You don't look at public safety for what they generate in revenue. That's not how you're supposed to look at public safety. Public safety is what we do as a part of government, and they're not supposed to think about, when they're writing the tickets, there's certain crimes that they can make a distinction between a felony and a misdemeanor. They're not supposed to sit back and say, well, you know, if I write it as a misdemeanor, it stays in city court, and they'll get the fine money that way, so we're going to write it as a misdemeanor. No, they write it as it is, and either it's a felony or a misdemeanor in their eyes, and they send it to the appropriate jurisdiction. Plain and simple. That's what is supposed to happen. This idea that it would cost more is a ruse. I mean, and I have no problem with us having in fact, I appreciate our public defender's office. But at the point that we start mischaracterizing, I think, in some respects, what is actually going on, it becomes a problem for me, because now we're sitting here acting like all of a sudden, when people get arrested in Atlanta, that if we were to not have a public defender's office, somehow we'll be violating the Constitution, and that's just not true. There are ways to address it, to not deal with that. I'm not suggesting that that's what we do, but I think when you characterize it as such, it is a misrepresentation to this council, and at best, what I asked for was simply, I asked the question, have we thought of other ways to do it? And I thought a responsible leader in the public defender's office or in the court would say, guess what? We'll go do a white paper, and we'll tell you how other jurisdictions do it. And we'll tell you what the pros and cons are of doing that, and then as policymakers, you all have at it. And then when you want to place an argument on the table as to why one should exist or one shouldn't, that's when you insert it. But when we're having a policy discussion in here, it is not appropriate, I think, to then get in the middle of what you believe your opinion is about what's best and why it should be that way. You tell us what the facts are. That's what I believe needs to happen. And right now, I feel like it has been mischaracterized at some level to my colleagues, and I believe in an inappropriate way. And that's just my opinion. And so I have to admit that I'm somewhat frustrated in how it was allowed to sort of just spiral out of control in terms of what is going on, because that's not what happens. Now, at the end of the day, what we do from a social justice standpoint, from a constituency services standpoint, from a whole lot of different vantage points, may be the best model available. But that wasn't the question. And all I asked for was a good question. And to answer Mr. Young's question, you didn't have to sort of say...
Councilman Willis, if I could.
Well, no, I still have the floor, so no, you can't.
I'm sorry. I apologize for interrupting you.
The point is that at the end of the day, it's not about, I mean, what I asked for was, are there other models that exist? The simple answer is yes, there are. Is there a way it can be done where people's rights have not been violated? The answer is yes, there is. Is there a way that other municipalities in the state of Georgia do it? The answer is absolutely. And the question then can be, is this the best way to do it? And that then calls for your opinion, and you can give it all day long, and guess what? I might even agree with you that this is the best way to do it. But those weren't the questions. You gave that answer long before we ever got there. And so it becomes fundamentally a problem, because at that point, as a policymaker, you've inserted your opinion in what I need in terms of factual information. And that becomes a problem for me. The reality is that there are other ways to do it. There are other options for us. And to then go, yes, you can say that it's more costly, but guess what? It's hard to even say that, because you didn't say how much we'd even be paying the attorneys that would do it. Because guess what? Every jurisdiction is even different when it comes to that. So the idea that there's some set fee is not true. The idea that every municipality does it this way, not true. Every county is even different. How counties are set. Fulton County doesn't even have a public defender's office the same way that everyone else. They have the public defender's office, they have the conflict defender's office, they have all of that. You go to Gwinnett County, they have none of those things. You go to different jurisdictions, it varies by county. And that's the only thing I'm saying. Are there other ways to do business? The answer is real simple. And then all we have to do as a council is then offer our policy position on what's best. And I've said this from the beginning, what is best may very well be what we have. But as a point of discussion, we should have all the information on the table. And I think when we say, have you thought of a different way to do business, and to continue to say, this is how I met my caseload was by bringing in interns and by doing this and having volunteer attorneys, that's not the same thing. It's a different way to do the same thing we've always done. And so I took what I thought was a soft position by saying, you know what, I'll agree to disagree. But at the point that I believe that there's misinformation out there, I fundamentally have a problem with that. Because your job is not to misinform this body. It is to give us the best information available so that we can make the most informed decision possible. And at the point we don't have that, we have been done a disservice as a body. Because everyone that sits up here is an attorney, and even those of us who are attorneys don't necessarily do what you do or understand exactly what you do. And so you have to educate us. And when you educate us, or you half educate us, or miseducate us, it's a disservice to this body.
All right, thank you, Mr. Willis. We've been joined by the Chief Judge. And Mr. Young asked to be acknowledged. And we're gonna wrap this portion of the presentation up. Fascinating though it has been, page 17 of the 17-page presentation has dominated our conversation thus far. And we're all anxious to hear from the Chief Judge. So, Mr. Young, and then we're going to move on.
Well, it certainly has been an education. And what I hear you saying, Mr. Willis, is beyond having a public defender, Miranda rights don't necessarily have to be violated as long as we provide an attorney. As I read between the lines of what I hear between what Ms. Joy is saying and what you're saying, and so the framework of the policy that we establish in providing an attorney for someone who's arrested, if they choose to have one, can vary.
I'm sorry.
She all right?
Do we need medical assistance?
We're going to adjourn the meeting for about 5 minutes while we deal with this.
Contributions from every one of those same entities that you say should be prohibited. So to answer your question, absolutely I believe that. And in fact, a smart business would. A smart business would. So let me ask you this though. What's the makeup of your board?
No problem. What's the makeup of my board?
How diverse is your board?
We have, I believe,
African American,
21
Asian, male, female, I'd like to know.
21 people on the board right now, 21. We've got five, I'm sorry, we just re-elected a new board, so I'm trying to remember them. 5 females, 1 African American, and the rest are white males.
So 1 African American out of 21.
Yes, we are currently offering a position to an African American, so it would make it 2.
All right, let's move up in the world. How many?
We welcome people to get involved in our organization. So if anybody would like to get involved, come to a board meeting and show interest in joining our board, we'd love to have you.
How many? Let's keep going down this line. So of the board, there are 5 women, which is what percent? About 22%.
Okay.
Right? Any idea what the population of Georgia's female population is?
I guess 52%.
Okay.
Was I close?
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay.
And so you know that, and obviously the board doesn't represent that. So now, in terms of other minorities, besides African Americans, how many other minorities are on the board? Asian, Latino?
None.
How many openly gay?
None that I know of.
So in regard to the diversity of Common Cause and this idea, not very diverse. Would you agree?
The board is currently not diverse. I've been in this position since last January, and since I came in, the number of women on the board has doubled. I'm currently recruiting the African American person that we're inviting onto the board, and I actually spent time helping the campaign to Kathy Woolard, so I would love to invite openly gay people on the board. So, I mean, I don't know where you're going with this.
You helped the campaign of Kathy Woolard?
I volunteered, yeah.
Before you became executive director of Common Cause, correct?
Long ago, yes.
Correct, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just intrigued by this. So do you do any investigation, or do you ask them what their financial backgrounds are?
Our board members?
Yes.
No.
Do you ask them what their financial capacity is?
No.
Do you ask them what type of financial interest they have in companies that are doing business with the state of Georgia or any other governmental entity?
It has been disclosed to us when they have those, yes, but no, we don't openly ask people what their business interests are.
So you could actually have people on your board who have business interests that is contrary to what's happening here today, potentially.
Theoretically, yeah.
So that's kind of troubling for me, right? Because I would think that a board that wants to talk about clean hands would want to be absolutely certain that its hands are completely clean.
Yeah.
And without your ability to come before this body and say that your hands are absolutely clean, yet for there to be articles that I remember getting a text message from my staff on Christmas Day to go look at the article, and I read it. And I remember sitting with my children saying, well, you don't want to know what I said, because it was absolutely unacceptable, the idea of how that came across. And so I would have wanted to know, and I would have hoped that the AJC would have asked you some of those same questions.
To your 6- and 7-year-old, you said?
Oh, I don't have a 6- and 7-year-old.
Oh, I thought you did.
But good try.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought you did.
So, but I am very open.
Sorry.
That was a big 13-year-old that walked in,
okay.
and guess what? I want her to understand that the process is extremely flawed sometimes, and that the people who throw the stones sometimes like to hide their hand, and that sometimes those who don't even hide their hand aren't necessarily the ones who should even be throwing the rocks.
We are in no way hiding our hands.
No, I understand that. I mean, look.
I mean, I understand. I mean, this is politics.
I have the floor.
So
I have the
you
floor.
don't like the message, you attack the messenger.
No, it's not about attacking the messenger.
Go right ahead.
I mean, Mr. Perry, we can say we're attacking the messenger, but I think it's important to get facts out on the table. Just like you wanted to get facts out on the table, and you've done that.
Mm-hmm.
I was asking questions to get facts on the table. I didn't attack you. You didn't create the board. You say you doubled the female participation from apparently 12% to 21% or 22% or whatever it is. So if I'm attacking the messenger, I'm attacking the body. I'm attacking the organization. I'm simply saying that how do you come forward and represent this organization is the voice of Georgia, the voice of Atlanta, the voice of reasonable-minded citizens when it doesn't represent the citizens of Georgia?
We do our best to do that, and again, we invite anybody. I invite your involvement. I certainly can't offer you a seat on the board because that's a board decision, but if you'd be interested in serving with us, I'd certainly support that. And you and anyone else can come to our board meetings. You can see what our discussions are. You can ask board members any questions you like. We're an open and transparent organization. We welcome that.
It's transparent as long as you don't ask the right questions.
We have that ability, but we'd be glad to release them.
Yeah, but they aren't released the way that elected officials are.
Mayor, we can't hear what you're saying.
I guess at the end of the day, I think what's troubling for me, and this is, I think, consistent with what I heard, is that your organization clearly has some challenges as well. And the reason I think it's important for us to discuss those challenges is because the very organization that wants to impugn the credibility of our process here in the city. I hear you.
It's not a fair statement at all.
Well, it's only said by the person who's doing it. But guess what? I'm the one on the receiving end, and so are my colleagues, and so is this mayor and all of our wonderful employees in this city. We're the ones on the receiving end of that, so we get to be the arbiter of that statement. And I will submit to you that we have been impugned. I've sat through it. I've read it, and it is absolutely ridiculous. I think the mayor was very well composed, extremely well composed, given the level of disrespect the city has seen in the discussion. And so to the extent that my colleagues want to hear you speak, I think it's important to ask questions about your organization and talk about what it is and who it is. And to the extent that it doesn't represent the city of Atlanta and its constituency, it doesn't represent. You essentially told us we have underrepresentation for minorities, underrepresentation for women, underrepresentation for all groups that would represent diversity, but you want to submit to us that you are the voice of reason and the voice of Georgia.
I've never claimed to be the voice of Georgia.
Or the voice of ethics.
Yes, we work on ethical, transparent government issues, yes.
Well.
And so what about what we do and what I'm saying is not open, ethical, and transparent?
What I will submit to you is that without a reasonable and balanced discussion, I would ask you the question, what is?
Without a reasonable and balanced discussion?
You can't have a balanced discussion with the same people in the room. When everyone in the room is almost of the same mindset, you have no diversity of opinion.
You didn't ask about diversity of opinion because we're a bipartisan board. We've got Republicans, we've got Democrats. We are on opposite ends of the spectrum ideologically. And so
what's the makeup of your group politically? How many Republicans?
What's that?
How many Republicans are in your group?
Probably 6 or 7.
And so now you say probably. Do you know or you don't know?
I didn't come prepared to list off each board member. There's 21. I can sit down and write it out, probably figure it out, or we can sit here and run through them if you want me to start naming them. 6 or 7 Republicans probably at this point.
Number of Democrats?
It changes. I would say people that claim to be Democrats would be 21 minus about 14, 13, 14.
Okay. Thank you for your indulgence, and colleagues, thank you for allowing me to go down that line of questioning.
Absolutely. Welcome you to get involved with us and help us overcome what you see as issues.